Hello, everybody. It's another Know What I Can podcast, and we are here today with Shannon Cox from Parkside, and we are going to be discussing things about suicide prevention, what parents and teachers and coaches and any caregivers, how they can start a conversation about this subject. And we're going to go to our intro, and we'll be right back.
Our mission is to promote strategies and policies which ensure improved health for all citizens of Nowata County.
Okay, here we go. This is one of those, if you know this podcast, we try to keep it light. We try to have fun. We just have a conversation where it's easy for our listeners and our watchers to enjoy it. But this, like a lot of our subjects, is pretty heavy. And so we're going to be respectful, but we also want to have a good time enjoying conversation because we're trying to figure out the best way to help these kids that need some extra help. So, Shannon, give us a little bit more about you, and then let's dive into the main topic of what we can do better to receive kids and give them an opportunity to present this to somebody if they're seeking help.
Sure. I am Shannon Cox. I'm with Parkside Psychiatric Hospital and Clinic out of Tulsa. I've been there for about 12 years. Started off my career actually at Grand Lake Mental Health Center.
Oh, okay. I'm
Not
familiar
too
with
far
Grand
from
Lake.
here. You guys probably know about them. And so, yeah, I've got about 25 years in the mental health field now. And today we're talking about suicide, which has been a big issue, as you were talking about before. Given the pandemic. Some statistics right off the bat are that Oklahoma, actually suicide rates are 10th in the nation. The 10th leading cause of death in the nation, 8th for Oklahoma, which is a little bit higher, and even higher for our teens and adolescents, so 10 years old to 34 years old, ranks about the second leading cause of death. It's only surpassed by car wrecks.
That's scary.
So, are you a therapist?
I am not a therapist.
Okay, so what is your role at?
My role at Parkside is the community liaison. So
okay.
basically, when there's an issue with Parkside Psychiatric Hospital or a need for information, I'm the one you call. I go out into the community a lot, share information about Parkside, as well as find out information about people like you guys here and bring that back to Parkside. We get a lot of calls from all over the state, even into Joplin, or like Missouri, Arkansas, and Kansas. And so when we discharge from our facility, we need a good place to send them back to. So I have lots of referrals. And then, families could need anything when they're discharging from a hospital, including a food pantry or maybe some substance abuse or mental health treatment or whatever they need in the community. I go find it for them.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I've met Shannon for whenever I was going to the Nowata Resource Council meetings as a Grand Lake employee. It was a way for me to get out of building. I could just go and usually have lunch, provided and stuff. So I've kind of known Shannon on and off basically through that, and we're glad you're here. We appreciate it. That makes sense. You're the community liaison. So.
Yes, I get paid to run around and talk to people.
Yeah.
Perfect nice? Job. Perfect.
I do a lot of talking, and I get a paycheck. I don't know if they really are in the same category, but that's what I do. So, well, Crystal,
start some questions. What's a good way to talk to our kids about suicide prevention? Hey, they've got a friend that's talked about that. So, some kids are afraid, don't want to be that snitch. They don't know, is it okay to tell somebody that my friend's talking about that?
Am I betraying my friend's trust because I'm saying something?
Yeah.
First of all, it is okay. It is okay to tell someone. And as a parent, I talk to my kids a lot about having a trusted adult or someone that you were comfortable going to. So if they were to come to me, or even someone, we talked about this earlier with the school counselor today. She had a kid that came to the nurse and said that he just didn't want to be here. Well, what does that mean?
Right. That could mean 10 different things.
Exactly.
I don't want to be at school today because...
What do you mean by that? And basically, he meant he didn't want to be at school. This particular nurse come up with that he was going to take his life, and so she turns on all the bells and whistles and gets all out of hand to come to find out once the counselor got to him, he didn't want to be at school today. So, so the first thing I would tell parents is ask, what do you mean?
Right.
What do you mean by that? Or another teenager could ask their friend, I've noticed that you're not, behaving quite yourself today. Is there something going on? Do you want to talk? Listening, number one skill. Just listen to what they have to say. As you get to the point to where maybe they are talking about hurting themselves, you want to find out if there's a plan. If they've thought out that far, is there a plan of action? Do they have access to the means that they intend to take their life? You would want to kind of get into those kinds of details. And if it was a teenager, I would ask, are you comfortable with me going to a trusted adult? Is there someone, do you want to go talk to your parents? Are you comfortable with a certain school counselor, teacher, community member, church? It doesn't really matter, but find a trusted adult that you can confide in.
Right. Sometimes they're telling that friend so they can get help, you know.
Yes, but I would definitely want those teenagers to know they're not breaking confidence. Their friend might be mad at them for a little bit, but they will get over it, and even better, they will be here to get over it.
Right.
Yeah. You'll be here to be mad at me later.
Exactly. Right. And they will work through it. I think for the most part, people who are contemplating suicide like being asked, like having the chance to talk and discuss it. What we see at Parkside is most people that are looking at taking their life don't see any other way out. Mm-hmm. They are stuck in a tunnel. They've gotten to the point of hopelessness, and they just don't see it. I think by having the chance to just listen, for somebody to come and say, hey, tell me about it, they have a chance to start getting it out. And as they process, I think they're doing this themselves. As they start processing that information, they're starting to come up with their own way out.
They're kind of talking themselves out of, oh, well, maybe it's not.
Exactly.
I was in mental health for 6 years, and then on top of that, I was a youth director at churches another 8 years. So this come up quite a bit. And I think one thing, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't been there for 3.5 years, so I'm maybe a little rusty, but could you speak towards the concept of confidentiality versus mandatory reporter and the differences between when does the mandatory reporter kick in? Who is a mandatory reporter? I'm setting you up because
you are setting.
This is for the people that may be curious about that. So,
yes, okay. So, mental health agencies like Grand Lake and Parkside are under HIPAA laws. Mm-hmm. So, like any other medical provider, we cannot share your information with anyone else. We are, however, also mandatory reporters, just like the school counselor would be, the coaches would be. If a student was to come and tell you that I have a plan to take my life, we have a mandate to report that and to get you help. So that is, the difference. If you're threatening to someone else, so as you're threatening yourself or someone else, we have a mandatory duty to report, and that will happen. Is that kind of like what you're going for?
Yeah. So in a scenario, I've had a kid who there are kids that will push the boundaries and try to figure out what they can get away with. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll say things for a reaction. I trained myself, and any of the other newer clinicians that was around me, and I got a chance to go, hey, let's think about this. That kid that is looking for a little bit of attention might say certain things because they know it's a trigger and it's going to set bells off. And sometimes people that don't understand it completely are going to react because they're scared to death that they might make a mistake and not get this kid the help that they need, which is totally understandable. So a kid may say, I hate my life, I don't want to be here, and I'm going to go kill myself. So for me, and as somebody who's been in it for longer than I have, my reaction is I'm not going to have a reaction. I'm going to say, man, that's rough. Why do you feel that way? And if they say, I hate this, and everything, and they go down and stay on the negative, then I'm going to say, well, what about Christmas vacation or spring break coming up? What are you going to do? I may try to divert it off, and they go, oh, yeah, we're going to go to Florida, and we're going to do this. And it's like, then in my head, I'm going, okay, that wasn't necessarily, that was kind of more about, hey, how do I get some attention, all this kind of stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that we're done with and we're not worried about this kid anymore, but it does kind of go, okay, maybe I don't need to call the therapist and call the crisis line and start all this, crisis stuff. But it kind of, if you can think of that as a parent and your kid is saying this kind of stuff, go, okay, I've had a kid tell me he's going to go kill somebody with a crossbow. I was like, do you have a crossbow? No, but I'll find one. Okay.
I agree.
And that's another thing about remind me because I am rusty. If they have a plan, and if they have the means to accomplish it,
and
means, then then we know we got to get
we're
real
going to
serious
get a whole
about it.
lot more concerned. If they just tell me they're going to go kill themselves because they're mad at somebody
Right.
right then, I'm probably going to ask a few more questions and like you said, open-ended questions. Let's get them to talk a little bit more. What do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you intend to do that? When do you intend to do that? You know, I'm really not going to go into the why so much because they don't really, you know, anyone who's truly suicidal doesn't know why.
Right.
I mean, that's irrelevant. I would tell parents in that situation, though, they know their kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, truly, I think parents, or if you have a friend that you're close to, I think you know the way they're normally acting. So if they're acting the way they're normally acting and they're just mad, you've got a pretty good sense about it. If the parent knows their kids and knows that, okay, they're saying they're going to take their life, even without a means and plans, if that's unusual for that kid, I would, as a parent, I would take that very seriously.
That is a major cry for help.
Right.
Okay, do we need counseling? Okay, at what
And
point?
I would much rather say, let's get that evaluation done and have that kid here tomorrow than to think that I didn't. Right. And I also want our kids to know when they say that, that's a very serious accusation. That's a very serious thing that you're telling me. And I'm going to take it serious. You may not like the consequences of this evaluation when we get it all done, but I'm going to take it very serious.
You can't just whip that out of your back pocket and use that to get what you want. And,
exactly.
And sometimes they'll do that.
But I would tell parents to rely on their own intuition and their instincts, but like you said before, err on the side of caution.
Absolutely.
Would there be certain warning signs, I mean, to watch for?
There are a lot of warning signs. So basically withdrawing, so like if they're really happy and active in sports and all of a sudden I don't want to go. If they really enjoy school, the next day they don't want to go. Maybe they withdraw from their friends. We've all heard the giving their stuff away as a possibility. And then also watch for the other. I'm looking for any kind of mood and change in mood because sometimes you will see them get really happy all of a sudden. We've had some clients that have told me in the past that once they made the decision, they felt like a weight was lifted off of them. And so they felt so much better because they had this day and the time and everything planned out. And they knew that life was going to be okay because they were not going to be here after Friday or whatever. Yeah. So you look for any kind of change in the mood that's just not
your normal kid.
Not the normal, exactly. And that's why I love small towns. I have to tell you guys this.
And it's usually a dramatic shift, right?
Usually a very dramatic shift. It could be change in weight, change in actions. But that's why I like small towns is because in small towns we have community members watching our kids. Mm-hmm. And if you don't notice, Marcus will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know the kids and you know your community members. You say, hey, you know, this is normally a bubbly kid and he's over there with his head down scuffing along the sidewalk. Maybe there's something going on. Right. At that point, it doesn't hurt to, hey, how you doing?
Yep,
Tell me about it.
Yep.
We have a lot of podcasts that have a bunch of different topics. And one of the themes that I think is just as simple and as wonderful as it can possibly be, we've had several people share their stories of addiction. And we've had counselors, school counselor come in and talk about what is the best thing we can do for a kid to support them while they're kind of stuck at home, what is it, whenever they study at home?
Virtual learning.
Yeah, virtual learning, yeah. And how it affects their mood and attitude and everything. And the beautiful thing is a lot of times it just boils down to is just be kind. That kid that's struggling, if the random person on the street or that athlete that they look up to or that uncle that they look up to just checks on them, and if we can just be kind considerably more often, we would have a little bit less of this. And it's the simplest thing you can do. Just, hey bud, you look like you're having a rough day. Come in here and have you had breakfast this morning? Would you like I got some Pop-Tarts in here or something like that. Do you want to just visit for a bit, or hey, give me a high five in the hallway next time I see you, something like that.
And if you know someone's been through a rough time, if they've had a traumatic event, I can't remember, there's an average number, I think it's like 1 or 2 traumatic ACEs experiences have happened in the average kids, and we know at Parkside those are up closer to 3 or 4. When we actually see them at Parkside, they have a whole lot of traumatic events. So I'm thinking even if they have had a traumatic event, you know about it, like you said, a high five, how you doing today? Nice to see you. Any kind words of encouragement, doesn't have to be a whole lot. There are numerous studies showing that just that kind word, that smile, that pat on the back makes all the difference when they're struggling.
You mentioned ACEs. And so for the layman watching, can you give a brief description of what the ACEs is?
I knew you were going to go there. adverse childhood experiences. Yeah, that's it. Adverse childhood experience. ACEs studies is basically seeing how much trauma a child has in in their home life, and that could be domestic violence, addiction, generational poverty. You can imagine what the war in Ukraine's doing for the ACEs studies over there. Environmental factors, bullying at school. There are just a whole list of ACEs and
is that something that I mean, that's a curiosity. That would be something that I would be like curious to fill. I've done it, and I scored pretty low, which on the good side. I don't. I'm a lucky dude. I'll tell people all day long. But I know some near and dear people that, oh my goodness, your ACEs score is pretty high,
and you wouldn't know it.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't know
and
it.
some people, and that's another thing about a misconception about suicide is it can affect anybody. Whether you're low income, high income, whether you look like you're the star athlete, whether you feel like you're the lowest of the low on the totem pole, the ACEs is very interesting. Is that something that you would suggest people kind of just Google and
they could Google
just
and
out of
find
curiosity
out
and go,
a little
oh
bit
man,
more about it? I think you'd be shocked at how many people.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I have been in trainings with the ACEs studies, and they'll have everybody in the room take it, and it's amazing. The person sitting next to you may have 3 or 4 of them where I'm like you. I'm like, I have 1 or 2. I have a very sheltered childhood, I guess. And I think the way that we're dealing with it is really based on our support network.
Right.
That support network. Yep. But the ones with higher ACEs tend to have less of a support network. Those with high ACEs with a good support network, I believe, are probably functioning a whole lot better in the society than those with a low support network.
And it's not a condemning number.
Absolutely
if you have
not.
if you have a high ACEs, don't think, oh my gosh, I'm very super high risk. That may not necessarily be true, but
it's just something to be aware of.
Exactly, and I think part of any treatment is being aware of yourself. And well, I guess I do get really mad whenever this specific subject comes up, and I guess that is causing a problem with my relationship and so on.
And why do I get mad? There's probably a traumatic event that leaks right back to, and that you can go, hey, this is why I do that. Maybe I can be aware of those triggers.
Absolutely. I don't think I've got any other questions.
I've been away from, we were in the schools and we had some kids, we brought in Stephen Hill, who came in and talked about his experiences with addiction, and it was a little bit of a trigger, and not in a bad way, but it brought up the feels, and we had some kids come forward, and if you're one of those kids and you happen to be seeing this, congratulations, good job. You did a great job reaching out, because that's what you need to do. You need to feel comfortable enough to do that, and we hope that anybody that is struggling with that will have the courage, or if you're a friend of one of those, have the courage to pat on the back. Hey, appreciate you. I hope you're having a good day. If there's anything I can do, you entrusted me with this information about your, what you're struggling with. But I kind of lost my train of thought, as I tend to do. But oh my gosh, I was going someplace with this. Some kids came forward, and I feel like the schools were fantastic at Grand Lake coming in and helping those kids. And I think just that alone has done a lot of good on top of what Stephen came specifically to do. And so, I'm failing right on camera.
You guys did an amazing job. You did. I think the best part of that is that you had the conversation.
Right. Yep.
For every time we can have the conversation without the fear that we're going to put this thought in the kid's mind, because we're not going to put it in their mind. If they're thinking about suicide, they're thinking about suicide. Right. If we bring it out into the open, then maybe, like you said, this kid's much more comfortable coming forward and saying, hey, I've had these thoughts, I would like to talk to someone.
Absolutely.
In fact, Parkside is working currently with Tulsa Public Schools on a collaborative partnership to do a video for how teenagers can talk to each other about suicide.
That would be awesome.
That's the whole point of it, is to make it, we don't have to talk about this every day, but make it okay to talk about it. Make it okay to have that conversation when I'm not feeling well. It's okay for me to come and say, hey, I need help, instead of them saying, being shut down.
It came back. The more opportunities kids, we take away the taboo, the easier it is for people to go, okay, I'm not the only one that struggles with this. It makes it easier
Yes.
having people like Steven come in, and even though it's not specifically on suicide, but it is part of the traumatic experience.
Yes.
And Steven mentioned multiple times that it's addiction is a family issue. It's not just that one individual. And the more people that can recognize it and deal with it and be supportive of it, and you take down the taboo of it, people may seek out help a lot sooner and not get to that level where they feel helpless. And the more we can have those kind of presentations in our schools, that's preventative.
Absolutely.
The and what is the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yep.
And so it really is in that way. It is a, what would you classify? You wouldn't say disease or affliction. What would you say? Because it doesn't really fit a category.
I don't know that it actually fits
A mental health
category.
issue.
But
or-
you and I, we all know there's things that happens in our home that we don't really want broadcasted
right.
in public. And I'm just saying maybe it's getting to the point where it's okay to say that, hey, I had that same problem and now we can discuss it.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe you don't feel alone knowing that, hey, you're not the only one that ever had this problem. Your neighbor had this
You're
problem
not
and they
alone.
did something about it, so you're not the only bad parent out there
Right.
or
Right.
the bad person having this issue, that you can actually get help and you can do something about it.
Right. You're not alone. I promise
No,
you're not
absolutely
alone.
not alone.
A lot of us have hit a lot of lows. But, well.
The good part about that is that you have a whole great long place to go back up.
Right.
you have
Right.
you have unlimited potential for expansion.
Absolutely.
Well, Shannon Cox with Parkside. Is there anything else that if we hit the stop button that you would go, oh, darn it, I wish I would have brought this up?
I think we're good. I would like everyone to know that you can call Parkside anytime, night or day. We are open 24/7. The number is 918-588-8888, or you can say 918-5 and then press 8 till the phone rings. It's really not that complicated. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want people to know about Parkside is that we are available 24/7. So if that parent, or not so much teenagers calling, but if the parent or that trusted adult, when they do come to a trusted adult, if they have a question and they don't know what to do, they can call. If it's not a crisis situation, they will address that over the phone, say, here's what I think you need to do, and send them to either Grand Lake or somebody in their community to follow up with. But they don't have to wait till the next day to find out
That's
that
awesome that that's a 24
there is
hour.
somebody to talk to,
Yeah.
and you can get that.
Awesome.
Because mental health issues don't work on a schedule.
They really don't.
I wish they would, because it would just make it a lot
Well,
easier.
usually about 4:30 on Friday evenings, maybe 4:50. Yeah.
What about, one last thing, what about the crisis line? Is that the same number or is that a separate number?
That is our crisis line.
That is the crisis
That
line.
is
Okay.
our crisis line. That is our one contact for everything Parkside does, and it is staffed by a licensed therapist 24/7.
Good deal.
Perfect.
So they can tell you insurance, outpatient appointments. Not that people from No One want to drive to Tulsa, but they can do that. We have a CDIOP group, an intensive chemical dependency outpatient group. They can discuss all that. They can discuss what beds are available. But a lot of times I'm thinking if parents aren't sure, they just need to know. They can call up and say, here's what my kid's doing, I'm not sure.
Right.
And I'll tell them if they meet criteria or not.
Awesome.
Well, I think
I think we wrapped it up.
we
I
wrapped it
think
up.
we're good.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Shannon, thanks for coming.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having
Appreciate
me,
you.
guys.
Yeah.
I enjoyed you.
All righty. Well, Misty, kick it to our outro.